All right, so jumping right into things, today we are taking a deep dive into, well, frankly, a pretty major news story that just broke.
Yeah.
Kristi Noem is the new Homeland Security Secretary.
Big news.
Big news. And I think we all know this is a department with a big reach.
Hugely important.
Yeah, it affects everything from border security to cybersecurity and even like natural disasters. So,
Oh, yeah. All that falls under.
yeah, all that stuff. And we're basing this deep dive on a really recent CBS News article that just dropped. So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
So the headline is, Senate approved Kristi Noem as Homeland Security Secretary. Pretty straightforward. But I think what really makes this interesting is that she's going from
Yeah, she was
governor South Dakota,
the governor, right?
yeah, to a federal cabinet position.
Exactly.
That's a big jump.
A big jump. So what do you think about that transition? Well, I mean, it's definitely significant. You know, being a governor obviously takes a lot of skills. You got to be good at a lot of things. But leading Homeland Security at the federal level, that's a whole other beast. And this department, you know, it's relatively new, right? Came about after 9/11.
Right.
And its responsibilities are always changing. So it's
That's a great point.
not just about experience.
Yeah.
It's about kind of navigating
Absolutely.
this constantly shifting landscape.
Yeah, it's a huge, ever-changing landscape. And so one thing that I noticed in the article that struck me as kind of strange is
Oh, yeah.
that it doesn't say anything about the actual Senate vote. You know, it just says she was approved.
Interesting.
Does that seem a little weird?
Yeah, I mean, you'd think they'd at least give us like a vote count or something.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these cabinet confirmations, especially for a department as important as Homeland Security, you know, they're usually a big deal. A lot of debate, a lot of scrutiny. So not having those details, I don't know, it could mean that everything went smoothly, but it also makes you wonder about, you know, transparency,
Yeah.
right? Like what was happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that lack of transparency, it makes you wonder
For sure.
if that's a sign of things to come under her leadership.
It's possible.
So we know that she's in Guy,
Mm.
but what can we realistically expect from her in this role?
Well, you know, that's the million-dollar question, right? But we can look at her background as governor for some clues, I think. I mean, for example, she's been pretty vocal about immigration and border security, so it wouldn't be surprising if those were, you know, key focus areas for her at Homeland Security.
Right, and thinking about her background,
Yeah.
do you think that her experience in South Dakota will translate well to, you know, national level challenges
Right.
like cybersecurity or responding to large-scale disasters? Are there any strengths or weaknesses that you see?
That's where things get interesting. You know, you have to think about the difference in scale.
Yeah.
Going from running a state to coordinating a national response to, let's say, a massive hurricane or a huge cyber attack. I mean, it's just a completely different level of responsibility and complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. So considering everything we've talked about, the change in roles, you know, her potential policy priorities, all the unknowns surrounding the confirmation, what do you think is the most important thing for us to be mindful of as she steps into this new position?
You know, I think the most important thing is to look beyond just the headlines. You know, don't just skim the surface. Really dig into what she actually does, the specifics of her policies as they come out. Pay attention to how her approach to Homeland Security might be different from, you know, the people who came before her, and how that might affect, you know, your everyday life.
That's great advice. I think that's something we'll all be keeping an eye on for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And for our listeners out there, here's something I want you to consider. Based on what we know about Noem's past and kind of what's going on in the world politically right now, what specific policy changes do you think we might see from Homeland Security? And how could those changes directly affect you or your community? These are questions worth thinking about as we keep following this story.
Absolutely.
You know, this
Yeah.
is just the beginning.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and
Thanks for having me.
yeah, of course. We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.